Good morning, guys. Good morning because it's, well, morning where I am. So I woke up just to be somewhat disappointed, but also somewhat not disappointed. When I say somewhat disappointed, I'm to some extent talking about Rolex, but in particularly the GMT Master, the new one. I think, listen, the last thing we need is another watch nicknamed after another soft beverage, and I'm honestly done with the nicknames altogether. To be frank here, if I see all the social media people, of course theoretically that would include me, but if I see all the social media guys, boys and girls out of Germany, yeah, man, getting hyped about this stuff, I don't know, really not my cup of tea. And I gotta be honest with you, I like some watches and other watches I don't like them very much, and I don't care about them very much. And if you do, that's fine. But I guess what we've seen in the last couple of years is very much a rising tide lifts all boats. There are watches being hyped up and talked about in very much detail, in a lot of detail, that a couple of years back no one would have given a flying F about. And to me, that includes the Air King. Again, if you like the Air King, that's fine, but I'm not going to be an expert on that watch because I simply don't like the watch. That includes the Yacht Master, and of course, we don't even have to talk about the Datejust 31. So when I say disappointed, I'm talking about the GMT, the Sprite GMT here. I went and said it. What I like, what would be the highlights from a Rolex perspective, they managed to make a fluid bezel out of platinum, so that's cool. Yeah, certainly not a bad watch. Also, what I do like about Rolex, and that's the part of me being not so disappointed, is that it's basically a non-event. Because my opinion always has been that I didn't care too much about the novelties because all the classics have already been released. And I think, if you, there's probably several reasons why you like Rolex, but one of the reasons to me is brand heritage and consistency. So I actually don't want them, I don't want to see them release new crazy stuff each and every year. So I think we should step away from expecting too much. Okay, this is Rolex, this is not Nike, pushing out, I don't know, many new colorways of Jordans every year. This is a different story here. So I think not releasing too much new stuff is actually a good thing. Also, what I think that they did somewhat smart is, yes, they introduced new stuff, but they also introduced new stuff and didn't tell us about, which again, back a couple of years back, it wouldn't even be a thing, and they treated exactly like that. For example, they introduced a new dial color for the date, yellow gold, green dial color. I think very similar to the green that we see on the OP. If you know me a little bit, you know that's not my thing, but they did it quietly, because if they would have announced that, that would even feed the hype even further. So they did this. They introduced some new Datejust styles in the 36 and the 41, if I'm not mistaken, and also green dial, but important to note probably, not the same green dial, the olive green dial that we already had on the date, but let me see where this is. But I believe they call it a mint green dial. So here we go. Kind of annoying going through the whole process, but bear with me. So this is new, okay? A lot of people will go crazy about it, but I guess again, this is not going to be the same green that we saw on the date. So I think what they did smartly is they didn't introduce too many new models, and some of the new stuff that they did, basically dials, they didn't talk about. What they also did is they discontinued the quote-unquote, here another nickname, Tiffany Blue OP in 41 mil. So what that means is, if you go to the Oyster Perpetual, the 36 is still shown in that Tiffany blue color variation, but it's no longer available on the 41. And this again just goes to show you how unpredictable Rolex is, because that model, or those models with all those different color variations, have only been introduced Who was it? I think 2 years ago. I'm bad. This whole COVID thing, well, doesn't make it easier to think about time. So they did this quietly, which I think is good. Then again, completely unpredictable. And going back to this being a rather, let's call it rather a non-event. I think next year will probably be not be a non-event, because next year is the anniversary of the Daytona. So, and me liking the Daytona very much, I think that's going to be a cool or difficult year, we'll see, but I think a lot of stuff will happen next year in terms of Daytona. When I say not disappointed, probably the primary reason I'm not disappointed is Vacheron. They put out, to me, in my opinion, the clear highlight of the show, the 222 as part of the Historique collection. And I mean, I said it before, I believe Vacheron, the overseas, this will be the next new hype anyway, after we had the hype on the Nautiluses and the Royal Oaks. Now I think more and more people are looking at overseas, and I think the way they did it with the 222 is also very smart, or at least smart. They released it as part of the Historique collection, so they didn't, let's say, bring it too close to the overseas collection and fed that, right? I think they did it in a very nice way. They, not sure if you can call it a reissue, but they released the watches very close to the original 222, and which is of course a predecessor to the overseas. But I guess they could have milked it even more, is what I'm trying to say, but they didn't, and they released it in 37, which is, I think, also something nice to see, that we're not always going for the jumbo sizes that we got so used to in the past. So, clear highlight, in my opinion, with regards to the brands that I care about, is the 222, and I'm going to be in Geneva, as I said before, on the 5th, and hopefully I can hold that watch in my hand, or at least look at it a bit closer. And yeah, price on request, by the way, so that's going to be interesting. There's also some patrimony releases, but I'm not going to go through them at this point in time, but excited to see this one here. Finally, Patek. Well, somewhat disappointed here as well, I gotta say, because I was expecting, well, two things, right? In a good and a bad way, again, the whole release. So what I was expecting was maybe that they would release new Calatravas, and they did, but I gotta be honest here again, a lot of people like those watches. So you got the 5226, and you got the 5326, which is a travel time with the moon phase, if I'm not mistaken. Not really my cup of tea. I was expecting more something along the lines of a successor to the 5196, the watch that I recently purchased. Something, similar to the 6119. They didn't come out with this yet, so they may do sometime soon. But why I'm happy is, well, the 5196 that I purchased is now officially discontinued. It's no longer available, as you can see on the website, so I'm happy I was able to obtain that watch. What I'm a bit disappointed about, they didn't introduce any new Nautiluses. But then again, this may be a smart way of doing things, and if you listen to what Mr. Stern said in the past, I think it's very clear that they don't want Patek to become a one-trick pony. He didn't say it, but I think he very much alluded to Audemars Piguet and basically being the brand that manufactures the Royal Oak and then some other stuff, right? So they don't want to do that, and so maybe the strategy here is to have several releases throughout the year, and during Watches and Wonders, the main event, shine some of their, actually all of the light on other models. So that would include the Calatravas, Grand Complications, and Complications. And if you ask me which watches I actually like that they released, well, I mean the 5270p, so that's the perpetual manual wound chrono in platinum, but that watch was released earlier anyway, was available in the salmon dial. Now they released it in green. Again, if you know me, not a huge fan of green, but if I would have to choose, one of the releases that I really like, that will probably be it. So yeah, as I said, overall I think mostly a non-event, at least on the Rolex side. The clear highlight in my opinion, the 222 from Vacheron. And as I said, I will be in Geneva on April 5th and hopefully have those watches in my hands, or at least be a bit closer to them and see them in the flesh. And yeah, again, I think a non-event is not the worst thing, because I think next year, particularly in terms of Rolex, will be crazy. So, or maybe not, as I said before, you can't really predict the brand. So, any comments, questions, put them in as always, or maybe not. And I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye bye.